Hello, this is Victoria Vives Kwon with Earth Sky People Radio and Earth Sky People TV. We have here with us today Councillor Simon Parkes. He was elected to office even after he went public in regards to his interactions with extraterrestrials. These experiences include the Mantid, Draconis Reptilian, the Feline, and many others. Simon, it is an honor to have you here with us today. Welcome to Earth Sky People.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you and to the audience.
So one of the first things that I would love for you to share is about your biological family.
Okay. You mean my Earth family?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I did have a mother and a father. My mother was a very, very gifted typist. She was an administrator. She had very good spelling skills, and therefore all her jobs were in offices. And after a while she got a job in a legal department, and she met some very important people, and she learned to understand very important documents, long complicated formula, and often saw blueprints. And she did that for about a year, and then her father, my grandfather, got her a job and moved her to a place called Brighton, which is in Sussex in England. And this is a very interesting office. It was a place where people brought their ideas and their inventions, and they got patents to protect their inventions. And while my mother was working there, she was approached by what we call MI5, British Security. And you know, she signed the Official Secrets Act and was based in that office, but in actual fact she worked from home doing documents for what was then MI5. So my mother was a very lonely woman, in the sense that my own biological father had left the family when I was about 1 year old. She never remarried, and she didn't have any boyfriends. And I think because of the sort of work she was doing, she really felt that she couldn't involve herself in anybody or anything because of the nature of the work. So she worked for MI5, although she was told that really she was working for America, for the National Security Agency of America. But because she was a British subject, she was managed in the country by MI5. Now my grandfather, that was her dad, had worked for the Foreign Intelligence Service of Great Britain, which is called MI6. But apparently he was working for the CIA. So it was interesting that my mother was working for the Domestic Security Service of Britain. My grandfather was working for the foreign group. My grandfather was a very, very influential man. He had been a Freemason. He was awarded some very high honours, some medals, the Order of the British Empire. He was made a Commander of the British Empire. He was offered a knighthood to make him Sir James Marsland. He declined that. He said he wouldn't have that. He went on to be Britain's representative to the United Nations, and he was there for 2 or 3 years. So he was a very, very influential person. Although my mother and her father, my grandfather, weren't very close, they used to argue over how I should be brought up. My mother had her ideas, her values, and my grandfather had his. My grandfather was a Satanist and wanted those values brought to me. My mother was not, and they would often argue and fight over how I should go. My mother fortunately won the argument. So we had magic, but we were taught magic, but not black magic, or in the sense anything from a satanic line. So it wasn't an ordinary upbringing. It was a very unusual, demanding upbringing, and one that I haven't found replicated anywhere else. So I hope that gives the listeners a bit of an idea about me.
What was a little bit the difference between those ideas from that Satanism aspect in regards to how would it be the ideas from your mother, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Well, the thing is that my grandfather was a member of what I suppose we could loosely call the Illuminati. Very much so, was a person who made things happen. And so he had an upbringing and a value-based system within a magical line. Now, my mother was magical, but of different values. In other words, the satanic group believe in sacrifice. The satanic group believe in linking earth magic with constellations and the moon. It's a reasonably unpleasant magic. Has some uses, but it's reasonably unpleasant. And my mother was not into that, so I didn't go down that line. And also, we haven't obviously talked about the alien intervention, but when I was asked to make a choice between who did I wish to associate with, the Draconis Reptilians or the Mantis or Mantid, I chose the Mantids. And I think that took me even further away from a satanic type of ritual and ceremony. Had I chosen the Reptilians, I think I would have been drawn into it. So I think that the life choices that I and my mother made steered me in a course away from the type of ritual and ceremony that usually revolves around blood.
So do you feel that still those groups are having some kind of control over the population, over the world? Which I think the answer is yes, but I just want to ask you to see if you have any insight as to how much they are affecting our world right now.
Well, they've run the world from the moment that they were put into positions of power. The names of these people change, but the practices that they haven't changed at all. So the answer is yes. It's used actually to control world leaders. For instance, world leaders will be summoned to meetings where they'll partake in these type of rituals, and of course they can then be blackmailed because they've taken part in them. But it's more than that, is that they join this elite club and they therefore are part of an organization. So it's part of a secret society, really. So yes, the vast majority of these people are still the same group that ruled in the days of ancient Egypt, in the days of Sumeria. It's the same families, the same bloodline, although, as I say, the faces and the names change, the characters are the same.
How do you feel that we can go out of this situation? Because if it has been for so many years and many of us unaware of the situation, like at least we are talking about it right now, which is good, and some people will hear about it, but I feel that a lot of people is so distracted away from reality and what is happening. How do you feel that we can go out of this situation? What can we do? Like perhaps me or somebody that feels a little powerless in this situation, what would you recommend for us?
Well, in your case, you're doing everything you can, I guess. You're running an internet radio show that gets the truth out to people. So you're doing your bit. All over the planet, people are doing their own bit. And we just have to have faith in human consciousness that the process that was started predominantly on the 21st of December 2012, which many people called an ascension. I know that's not the right word, but I often use that word myself because that's what the public understand, and we have to use words that people are comfortable with. There's big changes, even in my country in the last 4 years. We've seen some incredible changes as human consciousness begins to expand and sees through the curtain that has covered us for so long. You're right, it's been a very long time happening, but we are now going through a very positive change. And I think anybody who wants to help must find ways, join groups on the internet, form little groups that can meet in your house, attempt to share information, invite guest speakers to come and talk to you. So do everything you can to educate yourself and decide, what you think is the right way. So I always say to people, trust yourself. If you're in any doubt, then ask your higher self, who do you think is telling the truth, and what do you think you should do? So it's about forming groups, getting as much information, hearing as much as you can, reading as much as you can, and then deciding on how you want to help.
Do you feel that all these intentions that we are setting forth, those connections also, like right now connecting with you, maybe another interview connected with someone else, all of this you feel is also empowering us at an energetic level that maybe we don't realize, kind of giving us back into oneness a little bit, creating some channels of communication in some way?
It's all about, yes, you're absolutely right. It's all about consciousness. As human consciousness expands, it pushes out those ideas and values that aren't acceptable, and it changes what the human condition actually thinks is right. And there are many, many times in our history where, you know, we've looked back and we think, how could we possibly have accepted that? Or why did we go along with that? Those values are not acceptable now. And that's because it's taken time for human consciousness to evolve and change, and to express what we think is right and what's wrong. So when we communicate and when we link together, we are sharing not just within the planet but across the whole multiverse. What happens here has an effect elsewhere. So that's why it's really important that we get this right, because if we can have a positive action on this planet, it will really do well right across. So there's a lot riding at stake. There's a lot on this. And that's why I think both sides, both those that are beneficial to humanity and those that are not so beneficial, are really playing for all they can. These next 2 years are quite tricky, I think.
You know, and I feel that this year is a lot about putting information out there, and my feeling is that perhaps next year or so there will be disclosure, and it's kind of the completion from 2012, so that we can, perhaps it's going to be challenging. You know, I have many of my friends in Spain, for example, that they are very afraid of thinking that extraterrestrial life exists, but I feel that we need to accept it, right?
I think, yes, I think so. The situation that I'm aware of is that for a very long time, a group of what I call off-worlders have been giving ultimatums to the American government, saying that they must disclose and tell the truth. And the Americans have been saying, no, we won't, and they've been stalling for time. Well, the situation is now that they've been given a deadline that they must disclose in the next 2 years. If they don't, somebody else will do it. Now, the point is that if a government discloses, it controls the manner of that disclosure, and it can manage the situation, it can manage the repercussions and the fallout from that. And that is the advantage of disclosing. But if somebody else discloses, then it's at their choosing of time and space, which means there'll be no management of that situation. And this is a threat that's being used against the Americans, that if they don't be more truthful with the public, then it'll be taken out of their hands. Now, at the moment, the Americans are calling this group's bluff and saying you wouldn't dream of doing that because you know it will cause a bit of trouble. So at the moment, there's a big debate, there's a lot of dialogue going on, a lot of diplomacy. But my understanding is that this is a situation that won't be withdrawn. In other words, in 2 years' time, if there is not disclosure officially from an Earth government, then something will happen which will take that away from them. So we'll see. Looking at the situation with Russia, I know that Putin wants to disclose. The Russians want to tell the truth. So there's a lot to play for in the next 2 years. It's exciting.
It is, and I feel that also it makes a little more safe to go out and express experiences that we had. Like, for example, in your situation or other people's situation is before, some people may get killed because of sharing their truth, but now I feel that you guys are really helping the government and making like a pavement so that they can truly share, because now people is a little more familiar with this idea, whereas before it would be a shock, a complete shock.
Yes, I think what's happened is what many of us have tried to do is to take the initiative away from Hollywood. The last 20 years or so, Hollywood and the big directors have attempted to sell an idea regarding aliens and UFOs, and have tried to follow a government line. And this basically splits into two sorts. One is that aliens are bad and are going to come and blow the world up. And the other group is that aliens are good and are here to help us. And the negative governments wish to exploit that and to, as a potential to create a fake alien invasion, just literally to have martial law and to do everything that they want to do with that. So it's better when individuals like myself come and tell their truth, because I'm not got Hollywood behind me. I don't have anything like that. So I'm not meeting big producers of cinema companies. I'm not meeting people who want me to put a certain message out. And obviously what I often say is different from what Hollywood or some of those people come out and say.
Did you have any offers about sharing your story with Hollywood?
No. I think because Hollywood isn't about the truth. Hollywood is about a version of the truth that gives the American government its best result. So anything coming out of Hollywood is generally favorable to whatever the American administration wants. If they don't do that, then they find that they get their license revoked or they have problems. So my story is too empowering. The message I have is empowering for humanity. And sadly, there are a lot of people who don't want humanity to be empowered. They just want people to rely on the government, and the government will tell you what to do and how to do it. Whereas really, all people are very special and all people have the capability of making their own decisions. So it's a fundamental difference between me and many, not all, but many people in government.
Yeah, and what I observe, I think that in films and television, many times the information is mixed up. Some things are true, so then it's like, oh, maybe this is truthful, but then other things is like, this doesn't fit so much. So it becomes really confusing also.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's deliberate, trying to mix in truth and lies, or whether they're just so mixed up themselves because they don't really know the truth. They've just been fed information. And of course, they've got to make a film. And instead of making a happy film, they make scary, horrible, nasty films. And the feeling is, oh, unless the film is horrible, people won't watch it. Well, I just don't believe that. I think that it's about time we had some nice news stories. It's about time we saw some rather, it may not be what the government wants, but actually it's much more nearer the truth. To see a world without oil and a world without shareholders, and why do we have to pay for the roof over our heads? You have to pay for everything on this planet. And it seems very odd that it's a planet we're born onto, and we have to pay for it as if we're like cattle in a market. And it seems very odd that we spend all our lives paying corporations for the privilege of being on this planet. Somebody somewhere is getting richer and richer and richer on the back of ordinary people who are just trying to struggle. And that message is getting across, and I think ordinary people are getting heartily sick of the unfairness of the system. And so, yeah, I can see why Hollywood wouldn't like me, because I'm talking about completely rechanging the world we live in. And that wouldn't be any good to Hollywood, would it?
Exactly. That's why I left Hollywood. I was there. So, you mentioned about the movies being negative, which I agree. And do you feel that all the emotions that these movies are evoking from us are fitting somewhere in the fourth dimension?
Not entirely. I think that it's a mind program game. I think that you see, if you go back to the 1950s and 1960s, aliens were portrayed as bug-eyed blobs, and the more crazy they looked, then the happier people were. But what we saw in the 1970s, actually particularly with Star Trek, which was the 60s, but predominantly in the 70s and onwards, aliens were shown as more and more human-like. And this is very disquieting for people, because suddenly something that they could laugh at with 10 tentacles and 12 eyes suddenly had 2 eyes, 2 ears and a mouth and looked like them. And that was very worrying, because if in religion, in the Christian religion, people are taught that there is only God and there's only people, and that people are the only intelligent thing and they are the most important thing on the planet, and that's the end of the story. So when Hollywood starts introducing aliens that look like people, this actually runs up against religion. And that, you know, it's very subtle. It's a real conflict that's going on there. And that's why last year, when the new Pope took his speech when he became inaugurated, he said he would baptize aliens. Well, what a move in the last 10 years, where the Pope, the new incoming Pope, says, I would baptize an alien. Wow. That shows you how, and I think that's on YouTube, you can find that speech, but that shows how the big organizations are moving, because they know that disclosure is coming, and they're trying to position themselves and their organizations into, oh, well, we knew that. We knew there was aliens. Everything's all right. I said I'd baptize them, so it's not a problem. And they're all trying to get themselves in the position where they can deal with it. The people that are going to have the biggest problem are the media, because the media have tried to make fools of people. They've tried to make it a joke, portray people as crazy. Now, they've been doing what they've been told. So when this disclosure comes, there are going to be some very, very confused people out there. And they're going to need some support. There are people who will really need some support. If you spend 20 years of your life writing clever, witty articles about people who see flying saucers, and then you see one yourself, that's a problem. So, you know, it's not you and I and the listeners that are going to have a problem in the next 2 years. It's these people who have flatly refused to see the truth. They're the ones that are going to need the help, because their world is going to change dramatically.
We spoke about your biological or Earth family, and I really want to honor also your non-Earth family. So if you would share briefly about your non-Earth family.
Yeah, it's for people who are not in the subject, it's very hard for them to understand.
Our people here, sorry to interrupt, our people here are very familiar. We're always talking about these things, so you can share anything.
I appreciate that. I was meaning that people outside of this circle, they struggle to understand, because they only see the physical body. That's all they can understand. But we all have souls. Our souls are representative of our star families. And in my case, my soul has been somewhat altered. You know, it doesn't hurt. It's the way. So I have a portion of my soul which is from a reptilian, a portion which is from a mantid or a mantis, and a portion which is human. And it's remarkable how it all works together. But it means that I have a connection with 3 very different groups or races. 3 very different value-based systems, 3 things that look very different, but ultimately share a goal, which is humanity. Now, that goal may be different, but they all have an interest in humanity. So my connection is very strongly with the Mantis, from one of spirituality, from one of learning and friendship. With the Draconis Reptilian, it's one of culture, one of history, one of pride, ceremony. And with the humans, it's one of learning about connection to Earth, connection and understanding what love is and beauty is, and valuing what the human actually can give, and the potentiality of a human once it's released from the chains that it is now. So my star families are very different, not always in agreement, and it's been quite a bumpy ride in some ways, you know, from as a child being visited by these different creatures. And when you're a young child, you don't always understand the complexities, you don't always understand what is going on, and sometimes you just live from day to day, and it's only when you get older that you can begin to put the pieces together and get a bigger picture.
Wow. I feel that maybe many people may be experiencing something similar in their lives, but without any awareness that the reason why is that they have different aspects in their family, soul family.
Yes, I would say, on my own estimation, 75% of the population have one soul. So you are either Palladian, or you're Earth human, or you're Lyran, whatever it might be, or Reptilian. There are other elements. It's reasonably common to have two parts to your soul. Quite interesting when people have a reptilian energy overlay, but a human soul. It's less common to have three parts as I have, but I'm probably not the only person to have that, although it is unusual.
Wow. And at this moment, which civilizations you feel are in interaction with Earth? Which ones are for the good and which ones are not so good?
Right. There are a number of groups, but at the moment the major group, first of all, that's always been on the planet since about 220,000 years ago, in a controlling element, would be what we would call the Draconis Reptilians. So they are here in the Earth in a fourth dimensional state, although they can move into the three-dimensional state. We have more humanoid creatures advising Russia at the moment. Researchers refer to these as Nordics, and so it's these tall, whitish, humanoid-looking humans, definitely humans, who are advising on the other side, so to Russia. So we have two very different governments now with two very different sorts of advice. You have Mossad in Israel receiving information from a completely different star group. You have the Chinese, who are playing a double game. They certainly have connections with both the Reptilians and the Nordics, although they are moving more towards the Nordic line. You have Europe, which basically just does what America tells it. So it really boils down to three major groups. There are others who are active, but they are specialists, so they will have a specialism. So, you know, in America there are a group which we would refer to as the tall whites. Well, they're not really interested in world domination or helping the humans so much as doing their own specialism, whatever that might be. The United States Navy are in touch with a different form of reptilians called raptors, and they are more out for themselves. The US Navy has always been more balanced. Of all the military services in the world, the United States Navy has been the most human consciousness, perhaps the most supportive. So there are many different groups, and you know, sometimes in a month one group plays a bigger part than another. So there's a lot.
And when you are referring to humans, what I understand is that many of them are not terrestrial human, right?
No, I refer to Earth. An Earth human is a soul that has chosen to incarnate in an Earth human body again and again and again. So it's choosing to incarnate. The problem we have is that an Earth human has an organic brain. We all have organic brains, what I call monkey brains. but they have been subject to many years of conditioning, to mind control. And so when a soul incarnates into a earth human body repeatedly, it's doing so because it wants an easy life. It's not challenging anything, and therefore it's losing its connection with source. It's losing its connection, and it's getting slowly made asleep. Now, a higher earth human, in my book, is a human soul that's incarnated here from another dimension, specifically for a task either to work through karma from past lives, or to actually do some good for the planet or the humans on the planet. So 75% of the souls on this planet are earth human. The rest are non-earth human souls, whatever that mix may be.
And you mentioned about Draconis Reptilian being on the fourth dimension, and that is the part that I was referring before, in regards to movies and television always having us in fear. Is this like maybe a legend about these energies being feeding someone, or what do you think? You feel that they are empowering them in some way?
No. I see what you're saying. No. If you go back to the days of ancient Rome, and people would be put into an arena and they would kill each other, that's why they put thousands and thousands of seats around the arena, because all that death, all the people experiencing that death, then entities would hang over the arena, and they would then basically, for want of a better word, feed off that energy. Nowadays, it's a bit more subtle. You have Olympic Games, you have TV shows where millions of people watch a TV show and they get very excited and they buy into the TV show, and those emotions can be used. So TV has taken the place of the arena in physicality. So this is what they connect with. No, the point about scaring people by showing them, like Independence Day, the film Independence Day, or anything like that, is so that it gives an option to elite governments in America to attempt to pretend that there is an alien attack on Earth. Because if you as a child saw a film where flying saucers attacked London or New York or Rome, and then you grew up as an adult, and then it seemed to be playing out in front of you, as a human, or as a human creature, you automatically, subconsciously go back in your head to say, what information have I on this? So, oh yes, I saw a film 20 years ago about this. So you begin to create a reality, and instead of questioning what you're seeing, you say, well, I saw it on television, so this must be true. So all these films on the cinema are designed to give an option to the Illuminati if they wish to launch a pretend attack on Earth, and it would make it easier to sell that to the public. So that's what that is.
That's something huge, and I feel that what you mentioned about how it changed from the past into now being television, the media that is making us feel in fear. Well, I threw my television out over 10 years ago, but I know a lot of people, for example, with soccer games, they get completely crazy with all that passion. And if we would just realize that we are always being outside of our awareness of what is happening in our inside. So thank you for sharing that.
It's a pleasure.
And I know that we have an hour. I'm not sure if that's an hour from when we started trying to connect.
We probably got a bit longer.
Okay, because in the recording we have right now 34 minutes.
Okay, well we can go on for another half an hour, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much, because you have so much amazing information, and this information, it has been received by you because of your non-Earth family, or you have figured out some of this information, how it has been?
It comes through two ways. It comes from what we would call security sources, and it comes from off-world communication. And generally speaking, when one source backs up another, so one side tells me something and then another side tells me the same thing, and they both agree, then I'm happy to go public with that, because then I've got two independent sources telling me the same thing.
Wow, okay. So, I know that many of us have had experiences and then sometimes they're erased for some reason. Is this because we are not used to them, so we discard them? Is this because something external is erasing them? Is this because we don't communicate with one another? Because I remember that once I saw a celestial object and I discarded it, but somebody in front of me told me, "Did you see that?" And instantly I remember it and I noticed it. But if she didn't tell me, I would delete it. So I was wondering if you have any insight about this.
Okay, when somebody sees a real alien, it depends why they've seen them. If they've seen them for a reason, then either the alien will ensure they remember that because it's part of their learning process, or their mind will be wiped from that. But often, if it's very traumatic and the person is frightened by what they've seen, then they will blank that out themselves. In other words, you often hear about people in car crashes, auto crashes, and they wake up in hospital in the morning and they can't remember what happened. And that's because it was so scary that the human brain has actually just pushed it away to the back of the head and doesn't want to remember it. So for children, often that's the case, that something scary happens and they don't want to remember it. But out of every 12 cases, I would say 9 of those cases where the alien does not want the human to remember what has happened, because it puts that child, particularly the child, in a very difficult position, because it goes talking to its parents and it draws attention to it. Now, if an alien is going to visit a child regularly, the last thing it wants is to alert the parents to that, because the parents start watching the child very carefully. Or it may mean the child goes to hospital and the doctors get involved, and the doctors label that child as crazy and needs drugs, when that's not the case at all. So often an alien will blank somebody's mind to actually protect them from the fact that on Earth we are not understanding of the situation, and we would react in a way that would be detrimental to the child.
Is there something that we can do to remember more?
Well, it depends why it's been hidden from you. If the best thing that you can do is say to yourself, this is my memory, this happened to me, I have the right to know what happened to me. And although it's very difficult, when people are having an interaction with an alien, if they can just only say, I want to remember this, I have a right to remember this, then under universal law, they will actually be allowed to remember some part of that. But most people don't remember to speak like that because they're too shocked, or they're thinking of other things. But you have the right to say, I wish to remember some part of this.
Wonderful, that's good to know. And for what I understand, your Earth Mother had some information or knowledge about Rosswell?
Oh, right, okay. You're the first person to have picked that up. What happened was that, I should explain, I think, that I said my mother was a good typist and she had very good spelling. And under Operation Paperclip, German scientists from World War III, let's be technical about this, Nazi scientists from World War III, had been moved to America, predominantly America. But a lot had refused to go, and this isn't widely known. A lot didn't want to go and stayed in Germany. Now, technically, they were war criminals and should have been put on trial and sent to prison or executed. But they were very valuable because they were scientists. So what happened was that MI5 took responsibility for the scientists in the British quarter of Berlin. Germany was divided up. Berlin was divided up into France, Britain, America, and Russia. And Britain's MI5 looked after these people, and their nationality was removed. So in actual fact, the German government, the democratic German government, couldn't prosecute them because they were no longer German. Very clever move. So they were actually managed by Britain. So they were British subjects Or they weren't really, but that was the rules. So they couldn't be tried in a court, and they couldn't go to prison. So they just stayed working for MI5 in Germany. So this group were a fallback, a reserve, when the American scientists were overworked. Some of the questions or tasks were given to this German group to work on, and the documents they produced would come to my mother. These documents were in German, and they were anything from about 5 pages thick, quite small, to maybe 25 pages thick. They did have the German eagle on the front. There was no swastika, because this is after the Second World War. And they used to have the word secret, top secret, very top secret, or extremely top secret stamped on the front. And basically a man would come who knew my mother, who would translate German into English, and he would speak onto a tape, and then mother would play the tape, and the guy would speak one phrase in German and then translate to English, and then my mother would type on a German typewriter, interestingly enough, into English. So basically at the end of it, she had the original document, which was in German, and she had a copy in English. So this was for America, because the Americans didn't speak German really back then. So this is what happened. So she did that from about 1965, 66 to 1979. And she would regularly receive these documents, type them up, and hand them across. And so she was very knowledgeable because of what she was reading. And my mother worked Monday to Saturday, depending on how busy she was. She might work Sundays. Now, Monday to Friday, I used to go to school, but on a Saturday, I used to read the documents. My mother would go into the kitchen to do her food, and she would leave her typed stuff there, and I would then read through. So for about something like 3, 4, 5 years, every weekend, if I was about, I would be reading what she was typing. And it seems odd that she would leave the documents out. I almost think she deliberately left them out for me to read. It seems very odd, because at night time she locked everything away. She had a special place to lock things away, but she left them out for me to read, I think. And so she knew an awful lot, and she was very uncomfortable because she realized how much was being kept, how much of the truth was being kept from the people. And the more she did, the more uncomfortable she got. You know? Difficult for her, very difficult for her. So she knew. So when I had alien experiences, and I used to tell her, she would always used to say to me, pens and paper, draw crayons, draw them out, draw what you saw, and I will take them to my friends at work and show them. And that's what we used to do.
That's awesome. How wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's not a normal life. It's not a normal life. I understand that now. But when you're a kid, you don't know any different, and you think, oh well, this is the way it is.
Right.
It's only when you meet other families, you go through school and you realize, no, my life is somewhat different.
And would you share about the different humans in the different dimensions?
Well, yes. Fifth dimension, the Palladians, the one that everybody wants to be a Palladian. And, it's rather interesting because so much stuff is written on the internet by people who really don't know. They just don't know. They are reading stuff and they're just retyping it. Palladians are good people, but they're incredibly warlike. They had to be, because they were attacked by the Reptilians, and they're the only human race that responded effectively. So the Palladians gave as good as they got. An incredibly strong race, both physically and mentally. But the idea that Palladians are all daisies, buttercups and flowers and will all dance around holding hands is just nonsense. They had to fight a war of survival. So the Palladians come from the fifth dimension. Then we have those who come from just the late part of the fourth dimension. These are, of course, from Sirius or Sirius, depending on your pronunciation, the dog star. a very interesting group who have interacted for a very long time. Then we have the feline species, which is quite exciting. So many different groups, both humanoid and non-humanoid. But the fourth dimension holds a very heavy energy, and there are a number of groups who are trapped in the fourth dimension and haven't got the spirituality to evolve out of it yet. And the reptiles are in there, and some of the greys are in there as well. So it's a bit of a trough, it's a bit of a trap. Whereas you've got your Palladians and your Lyrans who are in the fifth and sixth dimension.
And when we are able to go through this disclosure and this opening and this awakening as a collective, do you feel that those civilizations in the fourth dimension will be able also to rise above to other dimensions?
There is a theory about ascension without work, without effort. The universe wouldn't allow that. The only group that's going to go up, or groups that will go up, are those that have good intent, because the universe won't allow anything that's very heavy to move up the ladder. So when the human group consciousness moves up the next ladder, anything with it can only go with it if it also shared that same value-based system. So as it stands, the reptilian race, which would like to get out of the position they're in, won't be able to, because they haven't made that conscious decision to change their lifestyle, to change their value-based system. If they were to change their value-based system, then yes, they could benefit from the massive explosion of energy that will happen when human consciousness expands and we are reunited with our DNA.
So you mentioned ladder, and in this process of going up the different dimensions, is this related to Kabbalah?
Well, yes, it can be. The point I suppose I want to make is that humans are not going straight to the fifth dimension. That's a New Age point that says we go straight to the fifth. That's logic says no, because we have to learn lessons, and there's a fourth dimension for a reason. And we go through different dimensions because we have to learn our lessons in that classroom. And once we've learned the lessons and we've succeeded, then we go to the next classroom. It's very special pleading to suggest that we would miss out a classroom. And the point is that the elite within the New Age are very well aware that those that manipulate us are in the fourth dimension. And therefore, this rumor was spread that we were going to miss out the fourth dimension and just go straight to the fifth. No, we have to face the people who have held us down. That's not just for our learning, but for their learning. So we will become aware of the fourth dimension fairly soon. And as we begin to perceive the fourth dimension, we will begin to perceive how we're being manipulated and who is doing the manipulation. And then we will have to decide as a human race how we deal with that. And that is part of the test of the fourth dimension.
The way in which I experience it is that anytime that I do shamanic journeying or meditation, I start exploring the world or all that is beyond my five physical senses. So it's mostly through my heart without boundaries. And I feel that that gives me an understanding of the fourth dimension. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, everyone is different. Everyone, you're a very spiritual person, so you experience that way. I'm not very good at meditation, so I don't quite see it like that. For me, the best example I can give, I will be walking down some stairs, and as I'm looking down, one of the stairs disappears. I know it's there in the third dimension, but it goes. Physically, I don't see it. What I see is a great drop, and I actually jump. Although in the reality it's there, I'm actually jumping that space, because to me I've glimpsed into another dimension and I've seen that it doesn't exist. Another example would be where I'm walking to go out of a room, and I reached my hand out to turn the door handle or the doorknob to open the door, and I realized that I've put my hand out 3 meters away from the door, because suddenly my whole depth of perception has changed. I thought there was the door handle, but in reality it's 3 meters away. So for me, the 4th dimension breaks in, or I break out of the 3rd dimension, and the two become mixed. Now, it is quite dangerous, because I feel certain that a number of people have lost their lives when driving a motor car, and they are looking at the road ahead, and in the 3rd dimension the road turns to the right, but they suddenly glimpse another dimension and the road is going on. So instead of turning the wheel into the 3rd dimension, they just keep it straight, and there have been a lot of accidents on corners and bends, and of course the system says, oh well, they were driving too fast on a bend. I'm sure in many cases that's right, but there are also cases, I think, where people are beginning to perceive another dimension. So it's something that people will have to be aware of. And another thing is lift doors. A number of people are telling me now that they're getting caught in the lift doors because they're not judging the movement correctly, and this is how it will occur. And what you're doing is you're traveling. You are physically leaving the 3rd dimension and you are traveling into another dimension. So you are doing it energetically, because you are capable of doing that. I don't think I'm capable of doing that. So for me, it occurs that way. And everyone is different. As long as people are experiencing it, then they are evolving.
And for somebody that is just not experiencing anything like that and would like to start, I don't know, doing any exercise or doing something, any recommendation you would have for them?
Yes. If they're not experiencing it yet, it's because they're not ready. Now, that's not a cop-out. What they've got to do, a lot of people read and read and read. They go on the internet and they read up and they know the names of everything and they know this and they know that. But what they should be doing is looking in here, because the answer isn't out here, the answer's in here. And yes, you can fill your mind full of all this interesting facts, but this is where you have to develop. So it's about introspection, it's about looking at yourself, looking at your values, trying to do some meditation, trying to understand who you are in the world, not learning about the presidents of the United States or this, that and the other, but who are you really? Why are you here? And understanding what your journey has been, and trying to understand how you are affected by your upbringing, by the matrix of the world, and how we are products of our response to learned stimuli. And so basically that's why these people need to change their tack, is not read everything on the internet, but set aside time regularly where they can just be quiet on their own and communicate with themselves. We live in a technological world where we're being told the answer is technology. Don't worry, you will be okay, technology will sort it out for you. And that means people are spending hours and hours on the internet reading as many conspiracy theories as the government calls it, as they can, when they should be spending time looking at themselves. So that's my humble advice.
Beautiful advice, I agree. And you mentioned the matrix, and I wanted to know if you feel that when we raise our frequency and reach the 4th dimension or other dimensions, this will be outside of the matrix, or there will be a different matrix, or is the matrix created by Illuminati? Or
That's a very good question. The net, that's the net. The net was designed to control humans in a 3rd dimensional setting. However, it also catches beings from other dimensions. But as we move into the 4th dimension, time and space completely alters. The concept that we have of time and space just will not work in a fourth dimensional setting. It means that we will begin to see things that we've never seen before. And I mean by see, I mean understand and work out and have answers for things that we thought we would never have answers for. So we will begin to realize that we are trapped in a prison planet with an energy net over us, which continually recycles the souls back into the planet. But once we move into the fourth dimension, we will see that clearly, and we will see who is operating it, why it's been operated, and then we will then be in a position to work out what we're going to do about it. Because at the moment, we are rather like a fly or a bee or a butterfly, whatever you want, that's in a room, and it's flying around, and it's quite happy because it's flying around, and then suddenly it comes up to a wall and it can't get through, and it thinks, oh, can't get out that way, never mind, I can fly over here. So it flies over to this wall. Oh, I can't get out, doesn't matter, I can fly over here. It's like your fish in a fish tank going round and round. But when your consciousness expands, you begin to say, why is this wall here? What is beyond this wall? Who put this wall here? Why can't I go through the wall? And the more you evolve, the more you begin to question, the more you begin to work out how you can get through that wall. So for negative forces, they want humans to be quiet, not thinking, to do what they're told, and to maintain the status quo. So anybody who wants humans to be a bit noisy, a bit questioning, and want to learn and to raise their vibration and their spirituality, that's dangerous for the system, because you and I and others are saying to people, this is not the reality. And that's very dangerous talk.
Wow. And sometimes if I speak to my family about anything like this, they're like, but we are so happy with, we have everything we need, we have this, we are enjoying so much this. And it's like if you are trying to break their dream or something, and they will resist it and engage to it as much as possible. So that's the part that becomes a little overwhelming. It's like we are aware of these things, but the people that is not are going to fight for their dream. Is this perhaps because they are afraid of going beyond that layer?
Yes. I always say to people that when you when your soul is active with your organic body, and yours is, and you'll know when you're active, because if you meet somebody in the street or in a shop and they cannot hold eye contact with you, your soul is active. And the reason is that when you look into somebody's eyes, if their soul is connected to their organic body, you get a glimpse of who they are. And that's looking into a fourth dimension or a fifth dimension. So an earth human person who isn't active, who looks into the eyes of somebody who's from another planet, sees something which scares them. And you'll find people will quickly look away. Time and time again, people who are active have learned not to look at people anyway. You learn not to stare at people, but to just give them a quick glance, because it makes them uncomfortable. And this is fear. I quite like Walt Disney's Beauty and the Beast cartoon, because one of the lines of the songs there is that we are scared by what we don't understand, or we fear what we don't understand. And that's very much the way it is with the Earth human race, is they don't understand it, they are frightened of it. So if you have a life, then you've got enough money, and you have enough prestige, and you have a nice motor car, and people are polite to you because you're successful, and you like all that, why would you want to go into something that could make people equal? Wow. Because what we're preaching is equality, and that isn't the system we have. We have a system of hierarchy. I am better than you because I earn more money than you. I'm better than you because I've got a professional job. You just take the trash out. You're nothing. I am this, I am that. So, you know, we're judged by how we dress, how big our house is, how big our motor car is. And that's how humanity, that's not natural, for goodness sake. That's how humans have been programmed to value life. And this is totally wrong. You know, why does a bank a guy working in the bank, making money for his company, why does he get paid more than someone working in a hospital? It's because the system says life is not important. Making money is important. So the system is sending these very nasty signals out, which is life and death is cheap, but making lots of money is really important. And I often give a talk where in Britain we have a television program and it's about antiques. And people from all over the country can bring their antiques, their bits of jewelry or their paintings or furniture, and an expert will look at it, you see, and tell them the history of it. And it's a television program and it's genuine. And you see them, they bring their paintings, and the person says, well, yes, this was painted in 1750 by a famous artist. And you look at the people standing there, they're not at all interested. They're waiting for that magic point. How much is it worth? So they'll stand there nodding, yes, 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 yes. Get on with it. How much is it worth? Yeah, come on, I want to know. And then the man says to them, do you know how much it's worth? And they'll either have an idea or they won't. Now, I saw something really sad. A person had a dolls collection, very old dolls, very valuable. And these dolls were brought out, and there was about 12 of them. And some of them, the cheaper ones, worth £150. Anyway, it gets to the last one, and the man has saved the last one. And he says, do you know how much this doll is worth? And the person genuinely didn't know. And the man said, it's worth about between £3,000 and £6,000. Now, the shocking thing was that an audience had gathered around to listen to this. And when this man said this doll was worth between £3,000 and £6,000, they all broke into spontaneous applause. Why? Why are they clapping a dead object which was made by a person that never lived, that has an arbitrary value of £3,000 or £6,000? Why don't they go and clap and cheer a doctor who saved somebody's life, or a nurse in a hospital that saves somebody's life, or a school teacher that spends extra time making sure that children understand what they're being taught? Why don't they go and clap those people? Why don't they go and help at an orphanage or at a rescue shelter? Why must they stand around and clap an object which is no use to anybody, but has been given an arbitrary value of £3,000 or £6,000? That's because they've been conditioned and controlled to value and respect money and power. And until that is changed, until that is broken, then those humans will never escape the trap. So that's an example of just how deep-rooted this business is.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing for sure that we are not value what is most important, which is life itself and one another. So, well, I trust that thanks to people like you, interviews and putting information out there, you know, it's repetition, repetition, repetition. The same that we got hypnotized this far, we can go back and realize our true divinity and the value of each personal life. So, Simon. Oh,
thank you. It's been lovely. It's been lovely to be on your show. You are a really good person. I'll tell you something about yourself. You are uncorruptible. That's very valuable. To be in a position where you have such strength that you can't be pushed off your course. That's why you do what you do, because you won't change. You will only do what is right for the people. So I'm very honoured to be on your show. I'm very honoured to know you. You're a lovely person, and I want you to keep on doing what you're doing. Don't take a rest. What do the Americans say? Put your foot on the gas pedal and just keep.
Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you. A million thanks.
Okay. God bless. See you soon. Bye bye.